So here's the flex in question. Here's the side that was torn. So luckily, the ambient light sensor is its own flex. There's a couple of solder points under here. So we're going to go and basically swap it out with our donor, which you can see those are the solder points right there. We have some flux. This is some 183 solder. There we go. As you can see, all that's just adhesive.
So there's two ways to desolder, either by using a iron. Mine is a bit small, so you'll see me switch to hot air in just a sec. Also, as long as you're using 183 solder, that definitely helps lower the melting point, so you don't need to use as much heat on the flex. I know it's a bit blurry, I'm sorry, but those points, there are 7 points in between those two little dots. The two little dots are viewing windows for that matter more when we are soldering it back on. But if you have a big enough soldering iron, you should be able to just peel it up ever so slightly. It's hard to convey this through a video. If you end up, I don't know, having an issue with this, let me know, and you can always mail it to me. I'd be happy to help you that way. But right now, it's desoldered. I'm just having a hard time with the adhesive, which is why I'm using isopropyl alcohol. Here we go again. I'm just terrified that, I don't want to accidentally tear the flex below it, because that's harder to repair or replace.
I put some flux. It's probably way too much, good lord. We have our donor, and as you can see, we have these two gold pins, and then we have these two little windows. It's more or less the same on iPads. We're gonna hold this down. Put some more flux. And then we can clean up the excess flux. And we put on a little bit of Captain tape. So unfortunately, there's not a bracket for this to easily sit in. So we're basically just going to be using adhesive. I could tell during the QC, testing, especially for this video, that Face ID works, which leads me to believe that there's basically just an issue with the alignment of this particular sensor. So we want to make sure we get this right.
So right where my index finger is the sensor that Face ID needs to function properly. I didn't mention this, but I put some adhesive right at the base of the sensor that sort of sits on the screen. This forces the sensor to lay flat on the screen, which is what Face ID needs, or else you'll just keep getting that lower message. So just thought I'd sort of point that out. Make sure that's done properly before you seal up your device, or you're going to have to take the whole thing apart again.
So the good news is we don't have the Face ID message grayed out. I did reset it so I could set up my face. And as you can see, it's finding us. I was able to do the second. It seems a bit inconsistent, but we're gonna call this a success. So in today's video, I'm gonna be fixing an iPad Pro Flex that was damaged from a shop, and sent the device into sort of a tailspin, just kept boot looping. I'm more or less going to be cleaning up their mess, and then just sort of talking about why a quality control, having those steps in place, especially as a repair shop, is so important. So if you're stumbling across this as a customer, some of these things could have been entirely avoided, which is why picking your repair shop is so important. I'll be as fair as I can to the repair shop because they're not here to defend themselves, and I don't even know what store there are. All I have is the iPad in its current state, all of my knowledge and experience, and the customer's account. Basically from his account, we have an iPad Pro, the 3rd generation, 11-inch, and the screen was cracked. He took it to a shop that apparently I found out yesterday they had for about a week and a half. I don't know if they were just waiting for the part in that amount of time, but by the customer's account, when he got it back, Face ID did not work. And then on top of that, maybe about a week later, he thought it was having quote-unquote charging issues. Well, he called the store. The store said, once again, this is his account, that it was charging perfectly fine. So he gave up, didn't want to go to that shop. Then he found me. As a part of my diagnostic steps, I have sort of a tool right here. I don't know if you can see this, but it basically is really helpful for diagnosing devices. It tells me, the current going in and out of or going into a device. So it actually tells me if something is charging. A very common example is I use this on Nintendo Switches all the time, because very frequently they'll only charge at, let's just say 5 volts when they're supposed to be charging at 15 volts. It also tells me the amps going in, so it gives me a much better idea as opposed to, just thinking that it's charging because the Apple logo is lighting up or whatever. Well, it was charging at a normal rate, so I knew that it didn't have a problem charging. It wasn't a charging port problem. So immediately after that, I proceeded to, because this is a common issue on iPhones and iPads, disconnect this Flex. Well, pretty much immediately it stopped boot looping and it turned on, charged up to about 15%. And I told the customer I could take it home and try to diagnose his Face ID issue, which would end up being a torn, one of these ambient light sensor, the ambient light sensor on each side of this Flex. One of them was torn, which would make sense that, the device was boot looping. So I'm going to go and solder. I have a donor Flex right here. I'm going to jump under the microscope and we're going to solder on a new one of these. I initially thought that the Face ID was damaged, but when I was messing around with it, it wants to pick up my face, but it just doesn't know. It keeps saying lower, so it has an issue with focusing, which leads me to believe that it just needs to be aligned properly on the screen, which once again, quality control would have more or less checked this. But yeah, let's jump under the microscope.